This is episode 78 of the Juicebox Podcast. This episode is sponsored by Insulet, makers of the OmniPod, the world's only tubeless insulin pump. Today's guest is Brandon Denson. Brandon, has type 1 diabetes. He played football for 4 years at Michigan State University. Played a little in the Canadian Football League, in the NFL. But you probably know Brandon from American Ninja Warrior, where just recently he stepped out shirtless with his infusion set from his insulin pump and his Dexcom right on his midsection. Brandon's a great example of doing whatever you want to do with type 1 diabetes. I mean, wait till you hear how he ends up playing college football. He walks on. It's really something. It's a lot with type 1 diabetes. It's a lot without type 1 diabetes. Guy's pretty damn inspirational, and I think you're going to enjoy this episode. Let's go. Please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise.
My name is Brandon Denson. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I've been living with T1D going on about 13 years. I actually coach high school football now, and I deal with troubled youth, and also I'm a disciplinarian in the middle school as well.
That sounds like a big job, actually. So you're diagnosed when you're, 16?
I just turned 17.
Just turned 17.
So, it was an interesting time because I was going into my senior year of high school, and I didn't know what college I was going to go to. I was coming off a knee surgery. I was still very active in all the sports that I participated in high school: baseball, football, basketball, and also track. Mm-hmm. So I stayed pretty busy along with my academics as well.
So I guess my first thought is when I hear, 16, 17 being diagnosed right around then, you're a fairly fully formed kid by that point. And so something like this was it a huge change, and how did you accept the change?
It was a huge change, but not in the sense that I wasn't able to make the change, or I didn't want to make the change. Mm-hmm. I think at that age, I kind of already knew, once it was explained to me what the pros and the cons were for not taking care of myself, and I kind of just then just took control of it and owned it. At the end of the day, a lot of people that know me to this day, and also that grew up with me, they know I'm always up for a challenge, and I have no problem working at something or trying to get better at something. And I knew it wasn't going to be easy, and even to this day, it's still not easy. But, I've learned to deal with it, and at the end of the day, embrace it because it's part of me, and there's nothing that I can do about it other than take care of myself and just try to live the best life that I can.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And so how much of that attitude is just you, and how much of it do you think is from being a competitive athlete? Because you can't give up listen, you can't give up in life, but if you're trying to be a competitive athlete, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but you played football in college. If you're trying to do something like that, I guess quitting can't really be part of your vocabulary, and seeing a challenge and backing down from it, or even being kind of knocked over by it, I guess it's just not how you lived.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, like I said, I've always been up for a challenge. I've always been a competitor. So, that being hit with the diabetes was kind of like an obstacle that I would say that got in my way. But I wasn't going to let it affect the way that I wanted to live my life. I wasn't going to let it affect the way that my family members, would have to worry about me, or, have to be concerned to the fact that they didn't think I was going to be able to take care of myself. At the end of the day, I was a teenage boy becoming a young man, and I knew at the end of the day, once I left from Ypsilanti and I went up to Michigan State, my mother wasn't going to be there. My father wasn't going to be there. my brother wasn't going to be there. So I had to take the responsibility of becoming a grown man, and I had to just go ahead and put that on my shoulders and not let anybody worry about what was going to happen. I had to take that responsibility head on, and I couldn't place it the responsibility from my trainers at Michigan State. I couldn't place the responsibility on my mother, my dad, my brother, because I'm the one that's dealing with it, and I'm the one that has to control it. Anybody can tell me that you need to check your blood sugar. You need to make sure you're bolusing for your meals. You need to make sure you're taking your Lantus at night every single day. They can tell me, but it doesn't mean anything unless I'm actually doing it. And I know that what the repercussions were gonna be if I didn't take care of myself. I wasn't gonna be able to play sports. I wasn't going to be able to hang out. I wasn't going to feel good. At the end of the day, I wasn't going to be able to push myself 110 miles an hour, if I didn't take care of what needed to be taken care of. And that was my health first and foremost.
Yeah. And so are you playing football at that age, or you're playing a couple of sports still when you're in high school?
So in high school, when I was first diagnosed, it was probably maybe midsummer. So it was shortly after, it was shortly before, actually, it was right after I had turned 17. So I turned 17 July 22nd, 2004.
Okay.
And I was diagnosed. This would have been going into the fall, so it would have been the football season. I'm getting ready for the football season. And then I also played basketball, and then I also played baseball, and I ran track.
So at that time of year, the heat of the year, your goal is, or what's going to happen is, you're going to go back to school before the school year starts, and you guys are going to work out like crazy trying to get back into shape for football. And at the same time, you're figuring out diabetes. Now, 13 years ago, you were doing it with, I'm assuming, just shots, right?
Yes, correct. So I was just taking insulin injections, and I was using Novolog, and then I also had Lantus as my basal.
And so what was the first hurdle to clear into understanding how to go out and push yourself in the heat like that without causing a problem? Or did you have problems that you had to figure out how to fix?
I think it was definitely an adjustment in the very beginning, even though I was in the honeymoon period, and a lot of people don't know what the honeymoon period is, but a lot of people do. It's a period where my blood sugars are pretty consistent, where I don't have to make any changes pretty much whatsoever with my boluses.
Because the belief is that your pancreas is still making some insulin and keeping you sort of regulated.
Exactly. So there weren't too many changes that I need to make in the beginning, but with the activity, ramping up with going into double days and stuff like that, and it being hot, you constantly have to make adjustments with that. My trainer really kept a very close eye on me, because we were noticing that I was going low a lot. So, anytime we had water breaks, I needed to check. Anytime maybe just defense was out on the field, because I only played offense in high school, then, they required me to check. And, the pattern that we kept picking up is that I was low, during practice. So I would either have Gatorade, or I had some fruit snacks, or I had some glucose tablets, just a snack to kind of bring it up, so then I'll be, in that safe range.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how many years, well, so you leave let's go this way. You leave high school. Do you know when you're graduating from high school, do you know you're going to Michigan State to play football, or does it not?
At that time, once I graduated, I kind of found out a little bit after I graduated that I was actually going to be a part of the football team. I didn't know prior to me graduating that I was actually going to be able to play. I already knew that I was going there after I graduated high school, but I didn't find out really until maybe a couple weeks after I graduated.
So are you highly recruited, or are you going to try to walk on? You're trying to walk on, or how does it work?
Yeah, so I wasn't recruited by Michigan State. And I think the interesting thing when I speak with anybody, and it's not just sports related, it's just to show like hard work and dedication. I wasn't recruited by any schools, to be honest. If you want me to be honest, I wasn't even recruited by Eastern Michigan. And a lot of people ask me, like, well, it's in your hometown, it's in Ypsilanti. Like, you're going to Michigan State. How come Eastern didn't recruit you? I said, honestly, I have no clue. If Eastern Michigan would have gave me a full ride scholarship coming out of high school, I would have gladly taken it. But that opportunity wasn't there. With my mindset, I knew that I was able to play anywhere in the country. In my own mind, that's where my confidence was. And to kind of do what I did and to walk on at Michigan State University, I always tell people and they laugh. I said I probably had a better chance at hitting the Mega Millions or the
Yeah,
Powerball
for sure.
because at the end of the day, that's not an easy task just to walk on at a university. But the even bigger task is to walk on at a major university, not only walk on, but walk on and
And
play.
play.
But not just walk on and play, walk on and start.
Right.
But not just walk on and start, but do that living with type 1 diabetes. That is a huge accomplishment.
Absolutely.
That like it goes beyond and beyond. And sometimes, I look back on it, it's like, I really did all of that with type 1 diabetes. So if I can do it, anybody else can do it. And it's not just football. It's about if you want to become a lawyer, if you want to become a doctor, if you want to become an FBI agent, like nothing
The
in
odds
the
are gonna
world
be,
can
yeah.
stop you from doing anything that you absolutely want to do. I mean, nothing.
Yeah, and you're really in a situation there where the cards are stacked against you because Michigan State has already recruited a football team. They've gone out, they've looked at people, they've decided these are the ones, and you played linebacker, is that right?
Exactly.
So there's guys and it's not like there's a million linebackers on the team either. They got probably the 4 guys they think are their starters.
Yep.
And you come on and you're like, hey, what's up? I'm Brandon. I want to play football here.
Exactly.
And they let you try, but in the back of their mind, even they're thinking, listen, if he's good, maybe you get to run down on special teams or something like that. But you're starting. And so let me take one sidetrack for 1 second, Brandon. I want to ask you a really serious question. What's it like to throw another human being? What does it feel? What does it feel like to be powerful enough to toss a person aside? I just need to know, and I want you to be honest. It feels amazing, yes?
I mean, it definitely feels amazing. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, being out there in Spartan Stadium is, I mean, I can't even explain it to you. It's a feeling that even just you talking about it, you asking me, what does it feel like to throw a human being?
Yeah.
Like just being on the practice field or in Spartan Stadium, like it just gives me goosebumps when I think about it because that's how real it actually was. And, a lot of people look at it like it's crazy, it's barbaric. Well, you know what you sign up for when you're playing football. At the end of the day,
Sure.
you know what comes with the territory. You know that injuries come with it. You know that concussions come. You know all these things. That come with it. But it's a great game. It's a great team sport. No one man can go out there and win the game. We always say, oh well, Swinson hit the game-winning field goal, or Hoyer threw the game-winning touchdown, or Kirk Cousins threw for so many yards, or Greg Jones had 15 tackles. Well, we all play a part in getting a win. Whether it's the last play that causes you to win the game, the last kick of the game, the last field goal, but there are elements that led up to you being in that position to actually take over the game and win the game.
In all walks of life, that's so true. But in sports specifically, I watching my son play baseball as long as I have, I've seen my son make a catch in the second inning that saves 2 runs.
Exactly.
Later, they win 1-0 and tell me the kid that hit the home run is why we won. I'm like, all right,
yeah.
But that's sort of the way life works a little bit too, and the way people's minds work. Like sometimes the more exciting thing is or the last thing they saw. But there's so many little pieces that go into it. And, I don't want to be ham-fisted, but diabetes management is exactly the same way. Like, it's simple to say, I'm getting low, so I drank some Gatorade. But why are you getting low? And how can we adjust that? And how many of these other millions of things are going into it? Exactly. And how long did you manage with shots until, because I know you use an insulin pump now, right?
Yes, I do. Correct.
Okay. And so when do you start thinking about an insulin pump? And does an insulin pump come before your glucose monitor?
So when I actually was first diagnosed, I was diagnosed in July of 2004, and my primary care physician was at the University of Michigan, and I went in. But prior to that, a couple of days prior to that, I was urinating a lot, and I told my mom. And at that time, I really wasn't intaking that much water, so it didn't match how many times I was actually urinating.
Right.
So my mom said if it continued, let her know. Went into the next day after football practice. I was at a friend's house. We were playing like a 20-minute game on Madden. I probably used the bathroom probably 15 times in 20 minutes. So after that game, I called my mom. I said, I'm on my way home. I'm still urinating a lot. And she said, when you get here, we'll go together to your primary care physician. We get up there. I end up, I had to use the bathroom again. They said they want to save the sample. So, I used it into the cup. They checked for ketones. They found ketones in the urine. Then they checked my blood sugar there, and it was like 1,000. My doctor said, I need you to rush into the hospital immediately. They took me to the hospital. As soon as I got there to the ER, they got me back. They actually gave me a shot, which I hate taking shots. Mm-hmm. Well, then I did. I'm just not a shot person.
No,
Never have been.
Hey, Brandon, I don't think anybody is.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So they get me back. They give me a shot of insulin. I'm like, why am I getting a shot? They said, we have to get your blood sugar down. At this time, I mean, everything's going 100 miles an hour. I don't know what's going on. I'm just letting them do what they need to do. So maybe half an hour, 45 minutes later, the doctor comes in, pulls my mother out the room. They go in the hallway, talk. They come back in. My mother's crying hysterically. I still don't know what's going on. The doctor starts to explain to me exactly that I have type 1 diabetes. So my mind is wondering, like, am I going to be able to play sports? Like, am I still going to have my friends? A lot of things are going through my head because I don't know anything about it. So he starts to explain it, and my mom, she's blaming herself. And I made a promise to my mom while I was in that room in the ER. I said, Mom, it doesn't matter what happens. I promise you I'm going to be okay. I promise you I will. And, that coming from a 17-year-old kid, you telling your mom that, when she looks back on it now, she's like I can't believe it. She's so proud, at the end of the day. And, I am too, because I lived up to my promise, but I wouldn't have made the promise if I didn't mean that I was going to do it. And so that night I ended up having to stay in the hospital that whole night. And I asked them when was I going to be able to be let go. And the nurse said, long as you learn, the next day, long as you know how to administer yourself, both of the insulins and you know how to check your blood sugar and everything, we'll discharge you like whenever in the morning. I was probably out of the hospital by 7:30 a.m. because I stayed up. I read all the books that evening and that all throughout the morning. And I really couldn't sleep. I just couldn't sleep because I was just trying to make sure I wanted to know. I was trying to figure out what was going on. But I remember one of the nurses came in there once they changed shifts. I can't remember her name. And she said, yeah, they make a device where you can actually type in however many units you need to give yourself, and then administer it in your body. And it's a device that you wear, pretty much 24/7, unless you're taking a shower or you're going swimming. And I'm thinking like, wow, that sounds pretty neat. So I ended up asking in the morning, like, it was any way that I could get that when the doctor came in to talk to me again, and my mom was there, and they said they normally like their type 1 diabetic patients to have experienced it with shots for about a year. Well, now it's changed a lot now. A lot of kids that I talk to, I mean, they're getting them within like the first few months,
right away.
So I think it's pretty cool. So it took me, I didn't get mine until I was actually, I think, going into my sophomore year of college.
Yeah.
So that's when I actually got mine. So it was probably about a year and a half before I actually was able to get it. But I got it pretty much like dead on, like at that year mark. Like I was already in the process of getting it taken care of.
Hey, speaking of insulin pumps, did you know this episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Insulet, and they make the OmniPod? The OmniPod is an insulin pump, but it's not an insulin pump the way you're thinking of it. Here's what I'm saying about that. When you think of an insulin pump, you think of this kind of thing that a cartridge goes into where you fill with insulin, and then there's a tube that comes off of it, and that tube kind of goes through your clothing or whatever into an infusion set, and that's what an insulin pump seems like to you. Then you got to take off that device with the tube attached to it, and you hold it up and push buttons on it and then clip it back on your belt when you're done. And, some of them have controllers, but, most of them are like that. You have to pick up the whole device to give yourself insulin. But did you know the OmniPod has no tubes? It's all self-contained in this one little tiny device. You just stick it on, and, well, that's sort of it. Everything you need is inside of it, with the exception of the personal diabetes manager. It's a handheld device that is not connected. It is wireless, fancy in the future kind of wireless. So if you want to give yourself insulin, you just sort of pull this thing out of your pocket, out of your bag, push a couple buttons, put it back in your bag, and the insulin delivers. Or you've made an adjustment to your basal rate, or done whatever it is you want to do. The PDM also has a meter in it, so you don't have to carry around duplicate items. My daughter has been using the OmniPod for 8 years now, and it is, in fact, one of the most fantastic tools in our diabetes chest, and a huge part of how Arden keeps her A1C where she does. She's able to continue getting insulin when she's swimming or active in sports, and to make small adjustments to her blood sugar without injections or without pulling out this big thing off her belt. And her tubing never gets caught on a doorknob. Because there is no tubing. It's a tubeless insulin pump. Come on. Check it out, myomnipod.com/demo, or the links in your show notes. Try a free, no obligation demo pod today. You will be glad you did. How do you handle, so I don't know what pump you use, but what were you using back then in college?
So I've been on this pump pretty much ever since I was diagnosed. I used another pump prior to this, but I actually only used it for about maybe 3 months, and then I had some issues with it, and then I switched over to the Medtronic, the Mini Med pump, and I think I'm using the 723 Paradigm. It's a purple pump. Purple's an awesome color, so I just want to throw that out there.
So
when
you're pumping with that and playing football, though, there's long stretches of time where you're on the field. I'm assuming you're not that Mini Med's not with you. So were you using were you still using Lantus during football season or anything for when you were disconnecting and playing, or how did you manage your because the reason I'm asking is this is so my daughter's 12.
Okay.
And she plays softball. And she's a really, really competitive person, and I've said it here before, so I don't want to waste a lot of time, but to make the point to you, she's very competitive, and when the game gets tight or where things get, close, her adrenaline kicks in, her blood sugar shoots up.
Yep.
And she needs insulin. So
okay.
how do you play football, which is basically a game of adrenaline?
Oh yeah.
And not have your pump on? I want to know how you manage that, because there are a lot of people like my daughter uses an OmniPod. And so she's got hers on all the time, so it's different. We can bolus while she's doing things, but a lot of kids are disconnecting to play sports. So how did you manage that?
So what a lot of people don't know is I actually played collegiate football and professionally with my pump.
You kept it on?
I always have it on. And the reason why I always have it on, as you made a good point, Scott, is because my adrenaline just naturally raises my blood sugar up. And it kind of took me a little while to realize that, because for practices and games, they're completely different. My adrenaline absolutely does nothing. Even though I'm amped for practice, it's crazy how when you put yourself in a practice mode and you put yourself in a game mode, it's your body just automatically knows it's time to go to war. And I mean, I literally, my blood sugar could be 110 before the game, but when we go out for pregame and then we're getting closer and closer, I could go from 110 to 200 within an hour.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Without eating anything, without without doing anything, it'll just shoot up like that. So the best thing for me is if it shoots up naturally like that, it wouldn't be smart for me to stay off the pump, because I need that insulin. If I take it off for 3 hours for a game, 3.5 hours, that's a long time without me getting insulin and knowing that my blood sugar is actually going to rise. So what I typically would do when I played collegiately at Michigan State and when I played professionally, I would typically check at halftime, and then I would make my adjustment based off of that. So if I was 300, I would make my adjustment and I would correct, So that's pretty much how I kind of handled that whole situation, because I didn't want to be off of my pump completely for 3 to 3.5 hours because it was just way too long.
Yeah, it's funny, and I'm sure you have a similar thing, but there's my daughter's she's quick, and
Okay.
when her blood sugar gets over around 180, I can tell just looking at her,
Yeah.
because just her foot speed just sort of goes away a little bit.
Yeah.
And so not only are you're not playing football for fun. If you go out and if you don't perform at Michigan State, there's another boy behind you would like to be doing it too. Right. So you're flying around trying to keep your spot as much as play well and everything else.
Exactly.
And so you're really managed. So you're testing at halftime, giving yourself insulin if you need it.
Yep.
Staying hydrated. How do you swing that to, like, how do you stay hydrated when you don't need glucose? Is there two different drinks for you?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is anytime I play collegiate football at Michigan State, or I play professionally, or even in training sessions, I normally keep Powerade Zero G2, or I'll have and for everybody that doesn't know, Powerade Zero doesn't have any carbs in it.
Excuse me, I made a bunch of noise there.
Yep, or sugars. And G2 has a very minimal, for like a 32-ounce bottle, probably maybe 8 grams of sugar, 5 grams of carbs in there. So it's little to nothing. But I also have Gatorade, or I have a regular Powerade. So if I'm low, I can drink the Powerade. And if I'm maybe high, or I know that I don't need to drink regular Gatorade or Powerade, I can drink the Powerade Zero or the G2. Still hydrate myself along with the water that I have as well.
So I'm glad to hear you say that, because for people listening, because I think a lot of people listening to the podcast are probably parents of kids.
Yeah.
And what you just described is exactly how I manage my daughter while she's playing sports. Right. So it doesn't matter if you're, Brandon, you were in the CFL, was that right?
Yes, I played in the NFL and the CFL.
The NFL and the CFL. Yeah. Okay, so here's a guy who played at that level. He played collegiately, he played in high school, and what he's telling you is that the way he takes care of himself while he's playing is pretty much the exact same way you should be taking care of your kids or yourself or whatever else. It's not it's not different from you to my daughter. But 79 pounds and 12 years old to you.
Hey, we're still warriors at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. You know what? It's so interesting. Like you said, it took a while to figure out adrenaline. I figured it out during basketball season, because she'd show up at a game. If her blood sugar was 90 when she got there, it was 220 by the time halftime would come.
Yeah.
And then I thought I saw a pattern, and then one day it didn't happen, and I stopped and really got back from it, and I realized the day it didn't happen, the game was never contested. They were way ahead from the beginning, and they were never in jeopardy of losing.
Yeah.
And what you talked about practice too. It's such a kind of a trite thing that people say, like, you have to practice the way you play and etc. And I don't think that's not true. I don't think you can show up at practice and loaf around. But I see my son catch balls in games he doesn't quite get to in practice.
Yeah.
And when I ask him why, he's like, it's a game. He's like I'm there's another level. Like, and it's
all or nothing.
Yeah, and it's not a conscious decision, is it? It's I think that people who perform in sports and succeed at that level, there's another gear that just they go into it, and I think it's kind of unconscious the way it happens.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Yeah, it was really cool to hear you say that. So all right, so you got to pump, you're pumping, but then you add the Dexcom at some point.
Yes, so I added the Dexcom. Well, let's rewind a little bit, because during college I actually tried the first CGM. I want to say that may have came out in the U.S., which would have been with Medtronic.
Yeah, the one that people call a harpoon.
Yeah, and a lot of people that haven't, like younger kids that haven't got a chance to experience it. For me, that was an interesting time. I thought it was something that was going to be pretty cool for me to actually experience, especially with having to deal with, 5:30, 6 a.m. workouts, then 8 o'clock class, then breakfast, then lunch, then maybe film sessions, a busy day away from home and stuff like that, to where I can actually read my blood glucose readings straight from my pump. For maybe about a week, it was okay. And then I saw a consistent trend, a pattern that was just awful. terribly wrong. I mean, my readings were just awful, and I mean the way that sensor felt to me, like you said, it literally felt like when I first injected it, I had to pull this big needle out. I mean, that was at least, I mean, God, it had to be about at least 2 inches long. The needle that came back out, it was a pretty big needle, and I'm not like over exaggerating. I mean, it really was.
I have heard people refer. I've never seen it up close. I've heard people refer to it as a harpoon. Yeah. So, and the technology's come a long way in a short amount of time.
It's come a long way. So when I first had the opportunity to be introduced to a Dexcom, I can't remember exactly what year it was. I want to say it was the first one was maybe the G7.
7 plus.
7 plus. Yeah, so I wore that for a hot second, and then they came out with the G4, and I got the G4, and I mean it's been, I mean ever since then. I mean currently I have the G5. I had the G4, G4 Share, G5. So I've actually had all of them. So I've been wearing them for pretty much a little bit shortly after they kind of came out. Dexcom was actually, hit the market, and it's I mean, I wear mine like faithfully. Like I remember when I was shooting some stuff for American Ninja Warrior, and it fell off, and I was like, oh man, this is not the time. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was just it was a bad time for it to fall off, but I had an extra sensor at the hotel, so I was able to actually wear it when I ran the course, and I think I mean, all in all, I mean, the Dexcom, it helps me out so much on a sports basis, but I think anybody that doesn't even play sports, I mean, when you look at it, when you have, let's say if I had kids and my 8-year-old son or daughter is at school, and the fact that I could be at work and I can check their blood sugar from school, I think that's amazing.
It's crazy.
The technology has changed so much. Now parents don't have to be, they're going to be worried. I mean, you're period, because you're dealing with something that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I always tell people when I speak with them, especially like teenagers, you have to understand where your parents are coming from, because at the end of the day, you're the one with it, but they have it too. Because, when they grew up, when your daughter was growing up, and I'm not sure how long she's been diagnosed, but you're going through the same thing she's going through. You're not taking the shots or pricking your finger, but you're the one that has to do it. You know what I mean? And that's tough. I can only imagine, having a 2-year-old or a 8-month-old, baby, and you having to, prick them and hear them cry and check the blood sugar and inject them with insulin. Like, that's a tough job to do. You know what I mean? And my hat goes off to you and your daughter, because that, and anybody else that has to go through that, because that's not an easy job. But you're doing what you need to do, so they can be a healthy human being.
Yeah. Now, I think much like you, saying I'm going to do what I have to do. I think a lot of parents end up doing that at the same time too. My daughter was diagnosed, Arden was diagnosed when she was 2. Okay. Right around her birthday in July. Also.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and she just turned 12 last month.
Okay.
So she's got a decade going. And I've been with, we've used Dexcom since the 7 plus, and we started with, Levemir and Novolog, and some needles. So,
okay.
Yeah, I know it's a lot better now. Like, there are people who come into it now and are like, this is horrible. And I don't disagree with them, but I tell them, wow, you get into a time machine with me and you'd think that this is, you'd be like, wow, this is fantastic. And so I think what you're saying is it shouldn't be glossed over, right? Like, it is a major accomplishment, whether you are the person with diabetes or you are the caregiver with somebody with diabetes. Just to do it every day like you're doing it is pretty spectacular. And some of this technology is, once you really learn how to use it,
it's awesome.
You don't need to be a football player to use it. So, like, Arden's endo appointment is Monday, so 2 days from when you and I are talking now. Yeah. And I'm actually excited to go. Because, and I say it here all the time, and I hope people take it the right way. I want them to take it like it's attainable, not like, look what we're doing. I really want them to see that it's attainable. But if, with a little bit of luck, Arden's next appointment will mark 3 years where her A1C will be between like 5.7 and 6.2 consistently.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, Brandon, it's the technology. I'm not that good at anything. You know what I mean?
It just like people always ask, when I talk to parents and I talk to kids, some of them don't actually want to wear the CGM. And, I think as they get a little older, they'll understand why. My main reason for wearing it is because I always want to know what my number is, and I always want to know, where I'm heading, if I'm going up, if I'm going down, if I'm staying, at a steady rate. I mean, for me, it's cool to know, like, I can see what my blood sugars are running throughout the course of the night once I wake up. And I can kind of see, if adjustments need to be made or if they don't need to be made. And
it's such a big deal. Overnight's a good example, right? Like, if you don't have a Dexcom, you might go to bed at 150 and feel like, okay, this feels comfortable. Yep. But last night, my daughter slept all night. Her blood sugar was like 80.
Yeah.
And what you don't realize is that if you get 8 hours a day, 30 days a month, 52 weeks a year of shaving 50 points off your blood sugar every day, that's how your A1C gets lower. You got to find those moments where you, I won't lie to you. Arden went to dinner a couple hours ago. We completely miscounted some carbs. Her blood sugar shot up out of nowhere. We knew immediately because of the Dexcom, and we were able to be very, very aggressive with it and get it right back down again.
Exactly.
And shots and or whatever, no shots or a pump or whatever. If you can't see it happening,
you don't know.
Maybe we test 3 hours later, right, Brandon? And then you're, oh my God, my blood sugar is 450. What happened?
It just, to me, with the technology, for me being able to, like you say, you hit it on the head. You go to bed at 120, and then all of a sudden, you drop down. The thing is, you get that real live number, but with the Dexcom, you get that number that it lets you know where you're trending, and I think it's very important. And I say for me, for sports, because I could be in a drill at practice doing something, and my trainer has my Dexcom, and I'm getting real live readings whether I need to get some Gatorade, because in a game, I don't have to worry about going down. I know where I'm going to go during the game just with my adrenaline. But during practice, now that's the game changer for me, because on any given day, I can be kind of up there a little bit, not high, but at a good level. But I could also be low, So them having my Dexcom while I'm out there, that just only helps me, because at the end of the day, they can let me know, hey, Denson, you need to get some Gatorade. Like, you need to get something in you, because sometimes when you're out there and you're competing, you don't really think about it. And I think your daughter can probably tell you that too. Like you said, you can tell, the difference in the play. I sometimes I can't tell the difference. I couldn't tell the difference in the play until I actually went back and looked at film. It wasn't that I was tired. It's just that I was fatigued from, maybe being a little bit higher than I'm normally supposed to be, But see, and that's the thing, the competitive nature. You just keep fighting, because at the end of the day, we put our pants on just like anybody else does. So we don't want the excuse, oh, it's just the diabetes. We just naturally, just as competitors, we just keep fighting through it.
Yeah, I saw last week so Arden and her friends, this is a great time to mention it, if anything, and her teammates, they just won the New Jersey State Little League title for 11 years old. Thank you. And so they were practicing for this tournament, last week. And I'm sitting there, and her blood sugar's sitting right at like 85, and it's sitting there, and I knew we had used insulin for a meal that before practice, and I thought 85 is too low. Like, not that it's too low, but I knew it wasn't the timing for the insulin. It's like, it's going to get lower, So I'm sitting there waiting, and I see the diagonal down arrow, so I'm like, okay, now's the time. And I go over, and I kind of toss a juice. She plays third base, and I tossed a juice box over the fence to her, and they took a timeout real quick. She drank the thing. And it worked. In about 10 minutes, she was like 90 again. But for those 10 minutes, she went from 65 to 50. And she sat at 50 for 10 minutes. And she came back up. So the coach said, hey, Arden, why don't you just go out in the outfield until your blood sugar comes back up and just, just to kind of hang out with the other coaches and talk about some other things. And she stood out there, and they kept hitting balls to like left field, to right field, and she couldn't stop herself. Like, she'd run and get them. And you know what I mean? Like, and the coach is like, no, it's okay, just hang out. But she's a competitive person. You know what I mean? You hit a ball up in the air, I'm going to go catch it if I can. And so she's rolling around, Brandon, with a 50 blood sugar. And I said to the guy sitting next to me, I said, I don't usually talk about my kid like this and, in public. And, it's different when you're talking about it here, you're trying to make a point to people. But I'm very quiet. And I said, I got to tell you how proud I am of her. I said, most of us, if our blood sugar was that low, be laying on the ground right now talking to Jesus. And I said, and instead she's just going this way and that way and back and front and throwing the ball around like it's nothing. And she's such a tiny person. It's very inspirational sometimes to see her do it,
It's very rewarding, at the end of the day, because then you're, everything that you've done and that she's done, she knows that no matter what obstacle she's placed up against or anybody dealing with it, they know that they can always fight through it and they can keep going. And, I'm sure she gains a lot of respect, not just from her family members, but also her teammates, and that goes a long way because now they trust and they believe in her no matter what, because at the end of the day, she's going through something, that's very, very, very tough. But, she probably, just embraces it and she continues to fight.
I think it's something that the two, listen, I think it's fair to say, Brandon, that not everybody has your good attitude, and that there are plenty of people living with diabetes who are drugged down by it, and rightfully so. And the different makeups, they have different constitutions. It affects them differently. But
exactly.
But really, what I hope that they hear from the conversation is that you go outside, you do something, you did it well, that's great. Now let's tie a 50 pound block to your back. Look, you still did it.
Yeah.
It sort of makes me feel like, well, there's nothing really here I can't do. I mean, if I could accomplish this with, like you said earlier, with diabetes, then really there shouldn't be anything I can't accomplish.
Exactly. It's very true. It's very true.
You're way ahead of people who walk out the door every day with a functioning pancreas, who take things like this for granted, who don't realize that by breaking your butt all day at 2:00 in the morning, your blood sugar is going to maybe get low.
Exactly.
And you don't get a chance to take your health for granted either, which I think is a real, listen.
It makes you proactive about everything.
It does.
Even the littlest things, it really does, because you realize you have to go through a series of different things every single day, that certain individuals don't. But the biggest thing I look at is, I think I've always embraced it with a positive attitude, and a lot of people will say even to this day that I grew up with or teammates that I play with, like, Denson, you're silly. And I think that's just something I've been, I've dealt with my whole life. But that's just another part of me that, just kind of took it head on from people cracking jokes to like, man, is that a pager or iPod or whatever? Hey, man, to me, it's all fun and games, because at the end of the day, I'm gonna teach you something about me that you probably never knew. And then once I'm like, it's an insulin pump, like I have to wear this every single day, and they're like, man, like my grandma has diabetes, and then it goes from like a joke and matter to like serious. Like, man, it's all good. Don't worry about it, man. Like, you didn't offend me. You know what I mean? So, for me, it's just kind of cool. But at the end of the day, I always look at it like it could always be way worse than what it is. It always could, and I try to tell people that and just let them know, like, yeah, would I be lying if I said that it sucks to have diabetes? I'd be lying if I said that. But at the end of the day, it could always be worse than this. It could always be worse than I could not have eyes. I could not have legs. I could not be able to do some of the things that I enjoy and I love to do every single day. It could always be worse than what it is.
Yeah, I think that I've seen in the diabetes community a little bit. Sometimes I see people take that sentiment the wrong way.
Yeah.
And I hope they hear the way you're saying it, because it really isn't. No one's saying that type 1 diabetes is easy.
No,
it's your thing. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Everybody gets something, and and this is what you got. And could it be worse? It absolutely could be. Could it be better?
Yeah.
It absolutely could be. But
But these are the cards that were dealt.
Yeah.
And, you had the opportunity to take advantage of it, or you can sit and you can slump about it, or you can be mad and upset about it. But the thing is, if you do that, it's only going to affect you at the end of the day. So
Right. Exactly.
Why not take a positive approach and take care of it? So then that way, later on down the road, you're not dealing with complications that you can't reverse, because when it gets to that point, you're done. It's nothing you can do.
Yeah, and you have to stay fluid. Like you were talking about having a good, sense of humor, which I think we have too. And I know I told somebody, I said it on the podcast not too long ago, and I heard back from some people who thought it was funny and got the gist. But Arden was sitting on the sofa doing something one day, and I'm like, "Hey, your blood sugar's going. Like, you gotta get something." And she kept ignoring me. I'm like, "What are you gonna do?" I was, "You gotta go now. Go pick something and eat something." I was like, "What are you gonna do?" She goes, "I'm just gonna sit here till I die." And she was joking, and I kind of appreciated that. I said, "Well, look, I'm not up for that yet, so why don't you go get some carbs?" and just to see a 12-year-old be like that loose about it. Yeah. Because you have to be loose, because if you stay rigid with diabetes, it will break you. You have to be fluid. And
one good one for me, I'll give you. My mom will always ask. I mean, I'm 29 years old, and she's always checking on me, make sure I'm all right with everything. And it's funny, like when we used to go out, and they'd be like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, I'm a little high." And then I'll be in the store with my mom, and then people will be looking at me like, "Wow, he's telling his mom he's high." Like, you know what I mean? Like the looks you get from people is like, "Oh no, like me and her know what we're talking about," but like everybody else is looking like, "Okay, what kind of parenting is going on here?"
You should look back at him and go, "Look, I'm completely baked, but I was talking about my blood sugar." So let me ask you a question. Very, very early on, you said at your diagnosis that your mom, in the moment at the ER, she blamed herself. Mm-hmm. Is that something she was able to shake over time?
Yeah, I think so. I think just throughout seeing the way that I handled it, and I think her being a mother, I know it's different from a father being a father and a mother being a mother, but I think, mothers are very protective. I mean, fathers are too, but when you, when you have that baby, you're all in. And that's what it was. She wanted to do everything she could to protect me. So I think the best thing for her to relieve pain probably was like, it's my fault. Like it's my fault. But I think later on, as we begin to continue to get educated on what was going on, and more so me being able to explain it to her, kind of how it happened and what was going on, I think she started to realize and feel comfortable that she really had nothing to do with it. But it didn't change her approach and her wanting to protect me at the end of the day. She still wanted to make sure I was all right. You know what I mean? So, sure. I think it was just a mother being a mother or a parent being a parent.
And just taking that on. Yeah,
exactly. Exactly.
So, are there other endocrine issues in your family? Like,
she's type 2, but other than that, no, there aren't.
Nothing. There's no like celiac disease or something else that you don't necessarily think of as being, because I find a lot of people see not always type 1 diabetes in their family over and over again, but they'll see some sort of endocrine issue and thyroid disease or something like that. Or
just like I said, just with her, she's type 2.
She's got type 2.
But other than that, no. Like any other family members and stuff like that.
Brandon,
immediate family members.
You're just lucky, I guess.
No, it's crazy, right?
You just won the wrong lottery. That's all.
the wrong lottery. Hey, maybe that's a sign. Maybe I'm gonna hit the real one.
That would be nice. So what are you doing now? So you're 29. You said you work with at-risk kids.
Yes, and I'm an advisor over our K through 8th grade in our middle school. So I stay pretty busy. I'm assistant defensive coordinator for Warriors College Prep, which is in Southwest Detroit. It's literally 5 minutes from downtown Detroit and Michigan. And then I work in the middle school as a disciplinarian. I'm the advisory. I'm head over advisories K through 8, and then I also deal with our at-risk youth.
How many kids do you have? Any students that have type 1?
In the high school, I had one that I was aware of. Since I'm transitioning down to the middle school, I don't know of any right off of hand.
Just getting there. Yeah.
But I do have a couple kids that come up to play basketball. That have them. I have a kid. I can't think of. I'm trying to think of his name. Donovan. He comes up. He's in 4th grade, but he doesn't actually attend the school. But he's a friend of mine's kid, and then I also have another kid that comes up Damien, his son, comes up. I just give them that outlet. That way they have somebody to talk to. Kind of like that role model, just to let them know, like, you could become whatever you want to become. They really like basketball, and Donovan, he actually likes soccer. He really likes soccer, but he plays basketball as well. But soccer is his thing, and I actually need to get him. I need to call his brother because I wanted to give him this pouch where he can house his insulin pump, and we have the same insulin pump. But Dexcom had gave me it's like a strap that goes around your waist, and I noticed at the last basketball camp he had, he was at, he kind of like just had it clipped to his pants, so I think he'll really like it. So
Arden used a speed belt. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but she used to use that back when you had to use the receiver and it wasn't your phone sitting on the bench. And she used to use that a lot when she was little. I just was thinking it must be great for the kids.
Yeah.
To see a real life person who played in college football, CFL, NFL in front of them with diabetes, you must be, something for them to really shoot for and aspire to. So that's excellent.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely funny when you go back to school because you're taking a week off and you went to go do some American Ninja Warrior stuff because I was a part of American Ninja.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that, but you're the guy people saw on television with the Dexcom on his stomach, right?
Yeah. So, when I get back to school, people are asking where I was, and the show doesn't air right away, just the finals. So then, a month later, people are saying, I saw you on TV. I saw you, know what I mean? And it's like, no, that wasn't me. I think no, that was you. That was you. So just playing around with them. But, it's kind of cool because at the end of the day, not only am I showing type 1 diabetic T1Ds, that they can do whatever they want. I'm showing kids in middle school and high school and elementary that I'm a normal human being that walks around on the same ground they walk around on. I put my shirt on the same way. You can do whatever you want to do, and you don't have to let anything stop you from doing that. How did you get on the show? I submitted a video just like everybody else. It may have been some interesting stuff in that video that they liked a little bit more, but at the end of the day, I was just being me, and the fun, goofy person that I am that has T1D, that doesn't let anything get in my way, and just showing the world that no matter whatever it is that you want to do, you're very well capable of doing it. Just as long as you give 110%. Hey, I always looked at it. If I give everything I got every time I hit the field or hit the classroom or hit a study session or whatever it is, if I know that I gave 110% every time, there's no if I come up short, I didn't fail because I gave it everything I had.
Yeah, you put your heart into it, and whatever happens ends up happening. And so let me ask you a question, because I looked real quickly. I notoriously do not prepare for these podcasts because I want them to be I want them to be conversational. And so, but you're 5'11", you're carrying a big frame, right? How you pull yourself up some of that stuff how hard is that American Ninja Warrior that course?
It's I think when you look at it from TV, you got a different view, but when you're actually on the obstacles, they can be a little bit challenging. I weigh right now, I probably weigh about 245, anywhere 240, 245. So just the weight that I give up easily probably is 100 pounds, for a lot of these athletes. A lot of these guys and females are, anywhere between like 120 to like 170, 160.
More the kind of CrossFit crowd, not football.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But it doesn't mean it can't be done, so I think that was kind of my approach, no matter what, me being a T1D, me being a former professional and collegiate football player, and then also just, being a competitor. At the end of the day, they all go out there to compete. I mean, it doesn't matter your size. At the end of the day, you can compete.
Trying to win something. Trying to be a little better, right? That's
sure.
Amazing. So, well, we're coming up on an hour already. So, I can't believe it. But I guess I liked the conversation. I thought it went really great in a really great way.
Sure.
Is there anything you're doing right now that you want to tell people about, or because somebody was telling me that you're trying to be more involved with diabetes in general, like you're looking for ways to be more involved, and
yes.
have you found those ways yet, or are you still searching?
So this past weekend, I went up to Michigan State University which is like my second home. My head coach, Mark D'Antonio, former head coach Mark D'Antonio, he's still the coach at Michigan State University. He was nominated as a co-chairman on the board for JDRF, the East Lansing chapter. And so I did the walk with him and some of his seniors that came out and signed autographs. So, just want to say thank you for that once again.
How did he get involved?
So he was, we all do some type of community service or charity events, and Ron Dooley had actually reached out to him when he came in once Jonell stepped down from the head coaching job, which would have been in 2006. So Mark D'Antonio came in 2007. Ron Dooley asked, would he be a part of it? And since then, he's been a part of it. He's been a part of the East Lansing chapter since then. So when I went away to play professionally, especially when I was in the CFL, I really didn't have the opportunity to come back and do that walk as much because I was in my season. So I've been trying to get more hands-on with that walk in JDRF in general, but I've always done stuff when I was here in the U.S. and in Canada as well. So, I've just been trying to give back as much as I can and get involved in, summits and galas and, those things. Last year, I had the opportunity to go out to Children's Congress, which was absolutely phenomenal. Like I always have great times at events that I go to with JDRF and all different types of T1D events. But that event kind of capped exactly why I do what I do. I mean, to see 160 kids from 6 different countries and 50 different states. I mean, it was a true blessing to see those kids up there telling their story to the congressman and just letting them know, like, we do need help and we need assistance, not only for the youth, but also for older type 1 diabetics, because if they don't have access to these technologies, how do you expect them to continue to live a healthy life, and it's very beneficial. I mean, just hearing some of these stories, I mean, you had kids there from when I literally say 4 years old to about 16, 17 years old. It really hits home, when you're in a room with 160 of these kids and they share the same stories and they go through the same things you go through, as you were growing up, or, going through the things of, sights being ripped off and parents having to check their blood sugars in the middle of the night and, kind of having to watch what you eat before you go to bed. And, it just really hits home. And, I have a lot of love and passion and respect, for people dealing with T1D because, it's definitely not easy.
I think that one of the more undervalued things that the JDRF does really well is government outreach. And you really do see the benefit of it. Even if it's just stuff, like the FDA working quicker or, congressmen voting for funding for things. And it's all it's fantastic, actually. So, all right, well, dude, I really appreciate you coming on and doing the podcast. We're starting to get a couple of, I had Sam Fold on recently, outfielder from the Oakland A's, and he's a guy. He's still playing just on shots, and he says he goes out in the field with a pocket full of bubble gum, and he said if he gets stuck in a long inning, he said if you ever see me chewing a lot of gum in the outfield, he said I'm probably low. And so I thought that was very funny.
Cool.
But I really appreciate you doing this. I'm sorry we had a couple scheduling gaffes. It's
no problem, Scott. I'm glad we were actually able to connect and get it done, and I mean it was definitely my pleasure, and I really do appreciate it.
How about Brandon? He was fantastic, right? Thank you, OmniPod, for sponsoring the Juicebox Podcast. Sincerely, there would be no Juicebox Podcast without the sponsorship of OmniPod. I don't know if you're aware of how long it takes to make a podcast, but it's a little longer than I tell my wife. So the sponsorship helps a lot. Also, try an OmniPod demo. It's a demo. It's free and it has no obligation. myomnipod.com/demo, or you look right in your player, you touch the little picture of from the Juicebox Podcast. It flips around and then there's a link on the back. You click that. Just click the link. Check it out. Nothing to lose. Maybe the OmniPod will be for you. Thanks for listening. If you're enjoying the podcast, please share it with a friend. I will be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.